Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. This is actually the first edition of season 4 and the first podcast of 2022. We're pleased to have as our guest former past president of the NIAAA, Lanness Robinson from Florida. Lanness, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's begin by having you share with our audience here in Utah and across the nation where you grew up, your participation in youth sports, college, first job, all that type of stuff.
Okay, well, I was born right here in Tampa, and I am a product of a divorced family. So I eventually moved to Atlanta with my mom, where I pretty much was raised. I was a student, athlete, got involved in youth sports, football, basketball, baseball, track, played a little bit of tennis. Youth sports was pretty much the thing that kept me going. And that transferred into high school. And in high school, I was a 4-sport athlete: football, basketball, track, and tennis. The tennis, interestingly enough, my dad played college tennis. So that's kind of where that came from. And to be real honest with you, my football coach in high school said we had to play a spring sport. So I did too, and I didn't want to do baseball for some reason. But anyway, didn't play at the college level. And I regret that, but had some opportunities, but injuries caught up with me. The lack of desire to want to move to a cold weather place because growing up in the South, because by the time I finished high school, I'd moved down with my dad in South Florida area, graduated from Ely High School there, primarily football, basketball, tennis, but did some track here or there. But went off to college and was going to be an accounting major of all things. And after a few classes said, nope, not really my thing, and reverted back to some of the jobs I'd had in high school, which was, I was a camp counselor working with kids, sports camp counselor of that. So, kind of put that desire working with kids and my desire to stay connected to sports and said, want to teach and coach, and led me to education degree. Started coaching and teaching at Godby High School in Tallahassee, I went to Florida State University. Most people that know me know that, but I went to do my internship that my last semester of college, and unfortunately the teacher resigned the day before school started. So they asked me if I wanted to teach. And so I had a paid internship, is the way I see it.
Oh, there you go.
Learning on the fly, so to speak, and got into coaching that immediately that first year, assistant basketball coach. And then after that 1 year was up, I had always had the plans of moving back to Tampa. So I did, and got into coaching. I was an assistant football and assistant basketball coach, Plant City High School. Did that for 5 years, and while I was doing that, I decided that I wanted to go to grad school, get my master's in educational leadership, and that that time coaching was some of the my funnest times as in my career, but it was also football and basketball, two demanding sports, year round, and decided that I wanted to go into the administration ranks. Here in my school district, Hillsborough County Public Schools, our athletic directors are assistant principals. So it requires having a master's in educational leadership, which I attained And, with the idea I was going to be a dean for a while, and then ultimately try to become an athletic director, or slash the official title, assistant principal of administration. And after a year, kind of was fortunate enough and became an athletic director, and then set my sights on, my next job, which is my current job. And that was the director of athletics for the school district, which I got that job about 5.5 years after starting at Wharton High School, where I was the athletic director in the school.
So what year did you start at the high school?
1994 was when I started in high school.
And so then you
Coaching and teaching.
graduated what, in 89 or 90 when you
Yeah, I
graduated?
graduated from high school in 1989. Yes, sir.
So let me have a follow-up question. I'm interested in, you ran track and tennis at the same time.
Mhm.
And so I think obviously for an athlete your caliber, that's not an issue. My question is, were the track and the tennis coach buddies, and how did they decide to share you, I guess is the right word?
So I practice both. With tennis, a lot of tennis you can practice on your own.
Right.
And so I would go to track practice immediately after school, and then I would go hit balls with either a teammate or coach or my dad or somebody. And fortunately, there wasn't a whole bunch of overlap of events, because the tennis was right after school and the track meets were in the evening. So if there were on the same day, I could do both. I might not play doubles. I might only play singles, but they work together. I don't know if they were buddies per se, but it was a situation where the schedule could be worked out so that I could do both. Yeah, obviously sharing of athletes is a thing, right? It can be challenging, but it's all about the coaches being willing and working with one another, really for the benefit of the athlete in that particular case.
Well, the reason I ask is I think back to when the only year that I coached soccer, this is way back in, I want to say 82. So it's the first year they had soccer, boys soccer in Utah. And I had an athlete that started for me that was a tennis player. And luckily the tennis matches were on different days than the soccer. But that coach wasn't quite as sharing as your coaches were, if you know what I mean.
I've seen it before, for sure.
Well, it's obviously, if they're thinking about the kids' well-being, if they're good enough to be a four-sport athlete, they should work around it and let the kid do that. But so
well, it helped that I actually helped both teams, so they were willing to. Right.
Well, and the thing I was going to mention is, and so soccer is a little bit different. So it's subjective as who you think your best 11 kids are. Mm-hmm. In track, there's no question. If you're the fastest, if you beat everybody, if in tennis, even though you're playing another sport, if you beat everybody, then you're the number one single guy. There's not a whole lot of the coaches being mean to my kid because he likes this two-sport kid. If you got beat, you got beat. So
yeah, I wasn't planning on running track. It was actually I started running track because we had a personal fitness class that we had to take as a high school student, and in that class, part of it was we had to go run a quarter mile. And I ran a quarter mile in high top basketball shoes, untied, in a
with
time
Chucks on.
I wasn't in Chucks. I'm a little after Chucks.
Oh yeah, okay.
But it was in a time that was faster than anybody on his team. So he was like, "We need you to run in some meets."
Right. I believe we can find a space for you. Okay, right. I like that. Mm-hmm. And speaking about some of your high school coaches, so mention to our audience some of the mentors you had growing up in high school and possibly once you got into athletic administration that had an effect on you.
Yeah, so I actually have, and I've told this story to some people, but mentors are vital in kind of shaping who a person is. But I've had mentors that I looked up to, right? And then there are some people that actually were mentors and I really didn't look up to them. And when I say that, people go, "What?" Well, there are some bad examples, and they're in a way a mentor of what not to be. so to
Okay.
speak. So, and I had one basketball coach that I was not very fond of. And when I set out on my coaching career, it was with a very much in the forefront of my mind, not to be him, if that makes sense. But then there was another basketball coach that I had. Remember, I told you I had a couple different. I
Sure.
went to high school, two different high schools, one in Atlanta, one in Pompano Beach down in the South Florida area. And I had one basketball coach that he was a social studies teacher. He was a basketball coach. He later became an assistant principal athletic director. You can kind of see where that one, which one I was following, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was a social studies teacher. I taught the same courses he did. I became head basketball coach. And so yeah, there are positive examples and negative examples, and both can serve as mentors. So in different ways, obviously.
Lanness, what's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
And I said that I didn't go play sports in college. And I think that's my biggest failure. I think I missed out on an opportunity that, I had opportunities and I didn't take advantage of them. And, as I was finishing up college, I kind of look back on it. Sports means so much to me. Athletics means so much to me. It's disappointed that I didn't pursue that. So I've kind of, in my own, head, kind of told myself, don't ever regret something. As you know, I use the motto of be better.
Yes.
And it's driven me. And that was just one example of how I could be better, and go after what I want and stop looking at the negatives and find a way to achieve, those different levels of success that you're hoping for.
So how many years have you been in athletic administration then, total?
I
so
am
far?
21. This is my 21st year. 5.5 years as a school athletic administrator. And now for the last 15.5 years, I've been a district athletic administrator.
And so when I first met you, you were still at the school and not the district, correct?
No, I just got into the district maybe a year before that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you, in your 21 years of experience, think back about how the job of athletic administrator is different today than it was when you first started 21 years ago.
Right.
Speak to that.
Yeah. So, we have so many other things that are a part of the job now. The biggest hot topic right now is just mental health, right? Like there's a concerted effort to talk about it, to be aware of it. And that was not necessarily the case. It was the old adage, my way or the highway. You can get water when I'm thirsty, all those salt tablets, all those different things, right?
I didn't know you were around during the salt tablet era. So
I came in on the end. I came on the end of that, right?
Okay.
And more heard about them than actually had them, but anyway, those are concepts that absolutely not, just like they're not even a thought process at this time. Like we've talked our way into being more educated, being more informed, concussions, dealing with that, dealing with just the infusion of technology. Man, the job has grown leaps and bounds. Now, at the core of it, we're still talking about making sure officials, making sure transportation, making sure everything's scheduled. That's at the core of it. But it's all the peripheral different, topics that you have to take care of long before you actually get to the core logistics of making sure that our athletic programs are running. Now, with fundraising efforts being so much more massive, and I would say more savvy involved in those fundraising efforts, legislators being involved at a much greater rate, finances being tighter, like it's the job has morphed. while staying the same. If the people listening can relate to that, it's definitely changed. But at the heart of what we do, it's still the same. It's just having to juggle so many other balls while trying to take care of the core.
Yeah, they just keep adding to it.
Yes.
And they think, well, you're the AD, you can handle this. We'll just, how about this? Take this, take this, take this.
Correct.
Let's reflect now back, Lanness. We'll have you reflect back on your journey with the FIAAA and how that began and how you got involved at the state level, and then we'll go from there to the national level.
Yeah, okay. So I got involved with the FIAAA, and it was pretty simple. Another mentor of mine was the director of athletics here in the school district. I became a school level AD, and we would go to our monthly meetings, and the district level AD, he was just a great guy, and always had a lot of words of wisdom and advice and such, and as I got to know him, he mentioned that he had gone into our retirement. We have this thing called drop, which is a 5-year retirement process.
Mm-hmm.
And he had entered into it, and that he had like 4 years left. And I was like, his name is Vernon Corn. And I was like, I want your job. And he said, well, if you want your job, here's what you need to do. You need to get involved with the FHSA, which is our state athletic association. And he helped me with that. You need to get involved with the FIAAA. And just so happened around that time, the person that was the board member from our local area was retiring. And, I raised my hand and volunteered to represent our area on the board. And he told me, when you go there, don't go sit on your hands and keep your mouth closed. Jump in with 2 feet, get involved, be heard, get to with teaching courses, and just be a active participant as a board member. And I did that. And there were some people within FIAAA, 2 people I mentioned all the time, Ron Balaz and Andy
Mm-hmm.
Childs, that said, come on, we need to get you involved here with the FIAAA, and then later on with the NIAAA. I started teaching. Then Andy brought me on and said, you need to share the responsibility of being a state coordinator for the FIAAA. And that's when my introduction, so to speak, with the NIAAA happened. And from there, that blossomed into a whole nother network of people, including yourself, Al Surslin. I remember taking 790 and you all saying, I like you. We need to get you more involved, to get you teaching at the national level. And I did. And from there, I was on the PD task force, Blue Ribbon panel, state, obviously participating in the state coordinator summit, actually leading some of the session. And then I decided to run for the board of directors and was fortunate enough to be elected. And same thing, become a board member, jump in with both feet. And I did, and then ran for the president-elect position, was not selected the first year. And I want to say that because, to be better, don't regret, keep pushing forward. I put my name in the second year, was fortunate enough to be selected at that time, and then had the pleasure to serve as the 41st president of the NIAAA, which that's just unbelievable to me.
Well, let's go back and talk for those who may not be familiar with the at-large process. You were Region C, and
Yep.
at that time, I believe when you ran, it was A, B, and C.
That's correct.
So A is the New York, those 8 states up there, and then the Middle Atlantic, Pennsylvania, Ohio. That's 2. So you're running against those other 2 regions, and it's a national election. So talk a little bit about that and talk about that experience, because I ran unsuccessfully long before I met you, way back in 1999. was my first experience with that. But I think maybe explain a little bit of that process and how that works to our listeners.
Okay. So I want to correct you, but it was so section 1, like you said, the Northeast, and then section 2, like you said, but it's also along the Eastern Seaboard. So those sections have massive numbers of people in them, and section 3 is the section which Florida's in, is the section that we need to do a better job in section 3 of increasing our membership in section 3. So it was a matter of, trying to have some name recognition, but also making those contacts and exposing who you are and putting yourself out there and really, being vulnerable to go through that process and understanding that it may not turn out the way you want, but being willing to go through it. I feel fortunate that I was selected at the end of the day. I think it had a lot to do with my networking, my willingness to be heard, to have an opinion, to voice my concerns or whatever it may be, but also be a type of person that is willing to listen and tell their story. And really, I think it came down to the speeches, which it tends to, right? And I think my speech, which included the story of Be Better and where it came from, I think it provided a little bit of genuineness and insight into who I am as a person and what's important to me. And I hope that the vote came down to a situation where individuals thought that I could represent them and as the general membership of the organization.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I just want to point back to a couple of things you said, as to put yourself out there and realize that you're vulnerable. For those who have not had that opportunity, and there's not very many of us in the NIAAA that will have an opportunity to run as an at-large, and obviously fewer than that who actually will win that election. I think of you, I think of Big Rich, I think of Jamie Sheets, all people that have won the at-large election. And I think that's a big thing. And I think the point you made about networking, I think is key, because it was obvious. When I say obvious to us in Utah, of course, you and I had a little bit of history, and we'll talk about that in a minute about the 790 class. But when it comes down to the speeches, which is what you said, and when people in Utah are asking me, well, what do you think about these 3 guys running? I said, well, it's kind of a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. I said, Lanness is the man. And they said, well, we thought he gave a real good speech. I said, well, he's the guy. So thanks for sharing that. So before we go to your time on the board and explore that a little bit longer, talk about maybe some of the successes you had as the coordinator. Because after we met, I knew you for years and years, because we would meet along with the rest of the U.S. in the coordinators meeting every September. So talk about some of the successes you had as a coordinator in Florida.
So I consider my biggest success as a coordinator is what we brought back to Florida. We have completely overhauled our number of offerings in Florida. And we've done that, one, at our state conference by increasing our teaching pool, our faculty pool. But also we took the show on the road. Told them, no matter where you are in the state of Florida, if you want to offer a class at locally, we'll come to you. And we've done that from, if you know anything about Florida, we've done it from Pensacola to Miami. And just for those that aren't aware, that's about an 11-hour drive difference.
Yeah.
So we'll take the show on the road. We've done it. We want to increase we're educational based athletics, and the only way that we can really preach that is actually live it. And so try to increase the number of athletic administrators that are taking courses, getting certified, like concerted effort. And I mean, I've taught most of those classes around the state of Florida. So, like I said, I consider that our biggest success here in Florida. with the state coordinator summit, however, I think just presenting and giving feedback when asked, and really trying to most of my presentations at the state coordinator summit has been about the use of technology. I am not the techno king. I am not. I'm not afraid of it, but I'm not it's point and click and figure it out and trial and error and all those different things. And I think we have all these tools at our disposal, and we don't always use them. And the one thing, the one positive that I have really kind of reflected upon a bunch in a lot of different scenarios is the use of technology throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom as a platform that we all became very familiar with. I mean, it's a game changer for us. And so I consider, the infusion of technology into our LTI courses, the infusion of technology into the PDA program as a whole. I think those are that's what I've brought at the national level with the state coordinator summit, but then at the state level, number of faculty that we have and the number of courses being offered throughout the state.
It's interesting that you said that you're not the tech guru, but I think, talking as one of the masses from one of the state coordinators, is that they think that you are. They think that it's Roy Turner, that it's you. Sometimes they put me as a weak third, but I agree with you. It's not really that we're so great at tech. I guess maybe we are, but it's the fact that we've embraced it and
Yes.
you figure it out and you use it. And I think that's important. I want to go back for a minute, back to 790 years ago when we first met. And I want to use this as an example to ADs in Utah and across the nation about how you can be, it doesn't have to be 790. It was in our case, but any class. And you have the chance, not that you go to a class to make an impression on an instructor, but go into a little bit of detail about the first time we met and then what happened after, and then I'll expound on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I signed up to take 790 because I'm going to teach classes. And remember I said Andy and Ron said you need to do this. So I go to conference and I'm taking 790. I do not remember which conference it was.
I don't either.
Just completely blanked on what conference it was. But anyway, so taking 790 and just kind of participating and if in the class, I'm going to participate. I'm going to try to be the best version of me I possibly can. And if you're in the class, you're there to learn, right? Like you signed up for a reason. So talking and giving feedback. 790, a class on teaching, no doubt. I'm a teacher, right?
Yeah.
So I have a natural background. So just participating and you guys pull me aside and ask my name and where I was from and what I've done and would I be interested in being involved at a greater level. And I mean, that little bit of interest that you all provided just kind of really set the ball in motion for me to take a greater involvement, want to be involved at a higher level. And I've given you all credit ever since then, every opportunity I can. And I think the biggest lesson in there is you never know when you're going to make an impression on someone, whether you're setting out to do it or not. So, just be engaged and be in the moment. And you never know where to go from there. That's the only thing I can really say about it.
Let me follow up. And the reason I asked this is 790, for those that have taken it, no, there's a part of 790 and it's expanded now in the new 790. But you give a slide cold to the 7 or 8 tables that are there. You give them a couple of minutes, they work it over, they decide who's going to teach it. And of course, your table decided it was you. And so now we get to about 5 or 6 of them. Back then, we maybe only got to 2 or 3 of them. But you made the presentation. And what was so impressive is when I talked with Al on the break was, my goodness, it's like he had this slide all along. It was like he was prepared all along. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for us. So obviously we approached you after. And I think I spoke to Jimmy Watkins later during the conference. And I said, I don't know where we need to get this guy. All I know is we need to have him. He's an up and comer. And then, like you say, it went from there. But I think the point, once again, I want to make is it doesn't have to be the 7-9. It can be in any class. Your interaction, points that you bring to the discussion. Because I know of others that are now on the national faculty and national chairs that were first noticed in another class, that their instructor noticed them, kind of pushed their name along. So thanks for sharing that. So let's now go back to your time as president on the NIAAA. And
wow, that's all I can say.
Wow. I think what a disappointment it must have been for you. Obviously, the conference is in Tampa. That's your hometown. It's not like you have to catch a plane to go to the conference. You'd work so hard, like all the board does. And then the COVID hits, and then we can't have it. So then we have to have a virtual conference. And so you're the only president that this has happened to. So talk about the highs and the lows, and some of maybe the disappointments, but maybe some of the benefits that came from that.
So I'm gonna tell you, the only disappointment was that you all didn't come to Tampa. That was my disappointment. It wasn't about me, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I got something, and I've gotten asked that a lot. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, don't be sorry. I got to do something that no one else ever has, and hopefully never will get to do. Like I got to oversee a virtual conference and be in the planning of that. And I've already talked about how technology is something that I've tried to push and enhance within the organization. I mean, we couldn't be more technological in that situation, right? And so, it was a pleasure, right? And I'm looking forward to everyone coming to Tampa in 2025, and not being on the board, I might actually be able to enjoy the conference a little bit more.
Yeah, there you go.
The year in itself was obviously weird and strange for everyone, but the other part that I feel is a positive was at the actual conference, when it's in person, there are so many things going on at one time that you really can't get into all of them and spend any real time. Because the conference was virtual and the schedule was more spread out, I actually got to participate in more than I would have if it were in person. So to be completely honest with you, I see it as nothing more than a huge gift, because literally the virtual conference, unprecedented, obviously, but again, it also gave me the opportunity to be more involved, and I took full advantage of it. I don't know if you've probably heard Mike Blackburn say, I went to a ton of different sessions. I tried to get to I didn't miss very many of them. And the people here in my office might have said, hey, we need you to get some stuff done around here, because I was zoom to steal that phrase.
Speak to a moment. One of the best memories I have of the conference is the fact that you got to do that one-on-one interview with Tony Dungy. And of course, Tony Dungy, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the top 3 football coaches in the history of the NFL. Just a great man. So talk about, how exciting that was for you. My goodness, I would have gone crazy just being in the same room with him. I wouldn't have been able to interview him.
So I kind of have to know a little bit of the background. That was not my first time meeting Tony Dungy, as you might imagine, being from here in Tampa. But more importantly, I've known Tony Dungy since 1978. He was a part of the 49ers coaching staff when my uncle, Freddie Solomon, which I always talk about with the Be Better, was on that team, on the 49ers team. So I've known Tony for a long time.
I remember Freddie Solomon. There you go. Yes.
So I was a kid, obviously, and now in my role as the director of athletics here in the district, he lives in our county still. I've interacted with him a lot, but I've never been in that setting with him. I'm not a person that does interviews a lot, right? But regardless, it was still an honor, because now I'm getting to introduce Tony Dungy and ask him whatever questions. It was It was an open session, mind you. Those weren't scripted questions. Those were my questions.
Wow.
Right. Like I could ask him anything that I wanted. And if you also recall he was keynote, the other keynote was Derek Brooks.
Exactly.
Derek Brooks is a friend of mine. We play golf. And we went to college together.
Okay.
So it was more difficult to interview Derek Brooks because I had to sit back and become Mr. Brooks this and Mr. Brooks that, right?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure.
When we got inside jokes, right?
Mhm.
But Tony was a treat just because of the human being that he is, like you said. Like, forget he's a football coach. He's just a great human being. And I don't know how much you all know what he does here in our community for different groups, underprivileged kids, adopted kids, individuals that have been incarcerated. Like he does so many different things that just goes unnoticed, under the radar. He doesn't ask for any notoriety. He's always in our schools. So it was a pleasure to be able to sit down and just talk to him about his experiences. And, his parents were teachers. So it was just a connection there. It was a treat for me, for sure.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I want you to reflect now back on the just completed Denver conference and share your impressions of that. And obviously finishing up your term as the past president, but share some of those ideas with our listeners across the nation.
Well, the first thing is, and I'm gonna use past President Langston's term now, embrace. We embraced being back together. And that was, I think for everyone, that was the highlight, just being back together and being able to get together and network and actually give somebody a hug and shake a hand and not see it in the 1x2 square on the screen. It was that was the highlight. But then obviously the business part of the conference, we got some snow early on.
Yeah.
For a quick minute. We got a little bit of, for some of us, change of temperature, right? But the business side of it is, the professional development that goes on at the NADC on an annual basis is just unbelievable. It is an opportunity to grow professionally. It's an opportunity to learn from the best of the best. It's an opportunity to network and grow your brand, so to speak. But more importantly, it's just an opportunity to learn and take back and I'm now have to go back to my term. Be better when you leave than when you came.
Mm-hmm. What's the favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job is when I get to make presentations of different awards to kids. Now, mind you, I'm in a district office, so I don't have day-to-day interaction with the student athletes. I do if I go to a game, but it's not all day, every day. So when I get the opportunity to, we have some awards presentations that we do throughout the year. We give individual like MVPs for every sport. Then we do team GPAs for every sport. And then we have a couple of different scholarship programs that we present. Just hearing their resumes, it just reinvigorates me to, we hear a lot of bad press about kids.
Yeah.
We have some fantastic student athletes. And I want to highlight student athletes because they're students and athletes. And, we all know 95% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are former high school student athletes. We know that they learn all the skills to be good teammates. We know they learn perseverance, dealing with failure, all of the different things that sports learns, being a good teammate. But more importantly, we get to see on a regular basis that this is the best of the best that are going to go on and do a lot of great things in a lot of different areas. Some will become doctors, some will be lawyers, some will be whatever we need in this world, but then some will become teachers and coaches and athletic administrators as well. And it's just a treat. That's the best part of my job is being able to see that. And in our scholarship programs, we always make sure to read their resumes, and we do that. And just snippets from their resumes, obviously, because a lot of those resumes, we would be there all night because they do so many great things. But we read those snippets, and the reason we do that is because it's you get to the point where you go, wow, that's impressive. And so, yeah, that's the best part of my job.
Thanks for sharing that. Let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being, if you had two suggestions for a new athletic administrator, that they would absolutely have to follow these two suggestions in order to be successful, what would those two things be?
Oh, boy. The first one is always have a process that you follow. Be consistent in your process, no matter what it is. When you're attacking whatever the scenario is, have a process that can be duplicated so that you will learn and be able to not make the same mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes no matter what we do. But repeated mistakes is where it becomes a negative. So the first thing is developing a process for accomplishing goals. That would be the first thing. And the second thing is have fun with it. We are not talking about sending a man to the moon. We are talking about logistics for athletic contests. So have fun with it. Don't stress. There is an answer. There's a way to get to a solution. Might not always be ideal, but have fun and enjoy the time and reflect on the positives and not focus on the negatives. The negatives will wear you down if you let them. So those would be my two pieces of advice that I would give.
Thank you. Lanness, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Oh, I don't know. You've kind of been thorough in your quest for information here. I think we've covered a lot.
Okay, perfect. We'll leave it at that.
Okay.
That brings us to the conclusion of the first edition of season 4 of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest today has been Lanness Robinson, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and former past president of the NIAAA and leader, obviously, in the FIAAA. Lanness, thanks for being on the show today.
Mark, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. And to all those people that will view this, Mark is a pillar of what we do. Use him as a resource.
You're too kind. Thank you, Lanness. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.